Welcome to this week's Safety Shop Walk video. We're going to start out with a safety shout out for Murray Larson, who did an excellent job cleaning and organizing the storage mezzanine that is above the maintenance department area. Great job, looks nice and clean. It was a mess up there. And now when people walk up there to get product, they're not going to have a lot of trip hazards or anything like that. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. Great job. Now that we've actually given our safety shout out, let's start with the topic for the week. In this week's topic, I want to talk about a very important thing, which is helping everyone understand what we mean when we talk about a JSA thought process and what that means. And how do you execute on it? So, to give you some context on the story, a JSA was introduced here way before my time, and a JSA is a form that's still used for field. And when you go to the field, you'll actually be using that. But what it is, it's basically the function of your thought process. And when we say JSA thought process, because we want you to think about this. How it's broken down is whenever you come to work, as soon as you get into work and you go to your job tasks and you talk about your job tasks, you're supposed to start looking for the hazards associated to the job you're about to start throughout the day. You look at these different hazards and realize, okay, I'm going to be climbing up on ladders. I got to make sure that I use 3 points of contact. I got to make sure my ladder is placed properly, I'm going to be bending down. I'm going to be working on my knees a lot, and all these different factors that can lead to situations where you could possibly be injured. Well, you think of those hazards, and then you go through the JSA thought process, which means JSA stands for Job Safety Analysis. So you go through the process of, okay, now I identified these different hazards. Now, how am I going to mitigate or correct these hazards? What am I going to do to prevent these hazards from happening throughout my day? Now, a lot of the times, many of the hazards are done through, secondary measures like PPE. But the primary measure is engineering controls to eliminate those hazards. For example, ladder usage. Are you going to use the right ladder, the right height of the ladder? How are you going to, is the ladder really necessary? All those different things that you want to think about. If you're going to be cutting and grinding, are you looking out for your flammables? Our body postures, are you going to be welding in awkward body postures? How are you going to eliminate those? Sometimes you cannot eliminate them, but you start thinking of ways to fix these things. For instance, if you're in an awkward body posture that you must because you couldn't bring the job up to a table and the awkward body posture is necessary for you to get the job done, then the mitigation for something like that would be not holding those postures for extended periods of time without taking enough breaks to do that. Now, other ways thing would be doing tasks that are very repetitive all day long that could cause shoulder strains, hand strains, and so forth. What do you do in those situations? Well, if you have a repetitive task, one way to fix something like that would be looking into alternative tasks that you could switch in between and at the same time keeps your project moving along. Talk to your lead. In the morning when you guys come in, you should be looking in through your JSA thought process with your lead and talk about what hazards you identified throughout the day. And this is not a morning thing only. This is throughout the day. Every time you switch task and you get sent to a different task, you're supposed to be thinking about it. The goal of this is to prevent injuries. We care for everyone, and you should care for yourself and everyone else. And we want you to really come in and think about these things before you begin working. Don't just come in and be a working bee. Don't come in and start doing your task without thinking of the consequences of your actions. And that is what we talk about when we say the JSA thought process. For those of you that have started that didn't realize, I understand that We didn't have a class that really focused on what I just talked about. There is a class for filling out a JSA form, which in sense, it's the same thing. You're just putting it into the form, but that's for the field operations. In here, we figured that, having a thought process and going through that without having to constantly create forms here because of the amount of supervision that is around wasn't necessary, but it doesn't mean that it's less important. The form is meaningless. What matters is the thoughts behind the form. That's what really matters. And that's what we want you to understand and make happen whenever you come to in. Hopefully this clears everything up for everyone. And, we want you to come in. We want you to come to a safe work environment and make it as safe as possible. But it takes your effort and the willingness for you to actually execute on this to make it happen. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.